Hello, everybody. Welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast where we transform adversities into triumphs and illuminate the extraordinary potential within all of us. When I say extraordinary, I mean it because when I talk to people, yes, they are just ordinary people, but who has done something extra, and we call them extraordinary. I'm your host, Thomas Carrier, a resilience coach, an ultra marathoner, and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life Mindset, coming April 2025. Here we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, and a success to inspire your journey. Today I am honored to welcome Caitlin Quarrington, a global people and culture leader. She is a passionate advocate for mental health and well-being in the workplace. I've known Caitlin for a while, and it's not just about workplace, but what she strives to work towards. She has had her own journey overcoming mental health, the challenges, and that's when she rose and she found her voice to be a leader and advocate. From what I believe, Caitlin saying is that she's dedicated to building a connected, inclusive, and a human-centered workplace. In fact, when we talk about human, that was a element which connected both of us. Be human, and I was like, whoa, that's something that I should know this personality more, and that's how we I got connected. But anyway, let me not waste much time. Caitlin, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise.
Thank you. That was a very nice intro. And it was reminding me how it was those two words, or maybe three. I might have said be more human.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, either way. But that was really what connected us in the first place. And also, yeah, what this conversation and the podcast is all about. These are just stories of being human.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't realize it is just small words, small statements at times, which creates such a beautiful resonance,
Hmm.
connecting people. And I think so. It's all about, especially when you talk about mental health, it's all about connection, reaching out. But again, the spotlight is you, Caitlin. So tell me a simple answer. Who are you?
You say it's simple. Well, you gave the nice LinkedIn intro, I think, of me and my background. Uh, I do work in people and culture, and really, my work is focused so much on connection and what connects people and their purpose as well. I do a lot of work in emotional intelligence and supporting folks with building their EQ skills. And a lot of that is around tapping into what drives us and what helps us to make stronger connections, both with understanding ourselves, but also connecting with others. Uh, for the purpose of this conversation, I will share a lot of that work is driven because of my lived experience with mental health and mental health challenges, because I found a lot of the skills that I learned through struggling with mental health actually are the same skills that we teach when we're teaching EQ leadership. And so it wasn't until many years on that I actually learned that connection, that the things that were fueling my well-being that I was taught through therapy and through seeking support for mental health actually has direct connection to building emotional intelligence, to helping make stronger, more connected leaders. So that's sort of the thread of why I find this work so meaningful, and why I've chosen it as my path is because it helped me to really shift my course and help me develop in new ways and overcome some of the challenges I was facing. And so it's motivating to me to share that with others in a work context.
Not only work context, Caitlin, is that okay? Now, when we are talking about it, I'm again being judgmental. Listeners may say, "Yeah, it's easy for her to say." Now she's a corporate leader; she can say. But if
Yeah.
you allow yourself, or for the audience to know,
Hmm.
if you allow to
Yeah.
go back to the recesses of your past,
Yeah.
what were the struggles, or what were the like? Well, yeah, I struggled when I was growing up,
Yep.
but what were they that defined you? You had an option of just going down the rabbit hole, sorry for the word,
Hmm.
or you could dig your way out. So, was there some instance or few instances that you would talk about? And again, I give you full permission if you do not want to talk about it, so be it.
Hmm. No, I'm happy to share more around what that looked like. And for me, this story goes back, over 25 years ago, um, because really, for me, my whole adult life, in different phases, I've been managing mental health. But in my mid 20s, I think that was really the period where I struggled the most. And sort of during my university years, is when I think of this turning point of where I hit a critical point in mental health, where I was suicidal and needed to be hospitalized. And that it was really a point where I think it was suddenly visible to my friends and family that I needed support. Because had I not gone and sought professional help and gone into the hospital, I think a lot of people saw only the surface, where I still was doing well in my university classes. I attended my undergrad university on full scholarship. And so, like, you'll see that kind of detail in my
Whoa, okay.
career. Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was a very academic student. And so I was able to keep that up just barely. But uh, I was struggling with managing my emotions. I didn't have healthy outlets for stress management. And so I internalized every challenge that I was faced with. And that will just eat away at you if you don't know how to express emotions, if you don't know ways to deal with that. I internalized everything against myself. And that really led to this critical burnout where I didn't think I could go on at all.
Hmm.
And so it was ultimately, when I look back on this, for a long time, I looked back on this, of needing to be in hospital. I took a year off of school before returning. Um, but I looked back on it for a long time with shame, because I felt like uh, it was weakness that had got me into that situation, that I couldn't hack it or I couldn't deal. And I think it's taken me many years and a lot of coaching and therapy to realize, actually, that took for me a lot of strength. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity, because of that, I got support now from friends and family who saw I was struggling and was able to get the therapy I needed, which for me, dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, that was what really resonated with me and helped me to uh, stop hurting myself, and also process my emotions in like a much healthier way than this sort of self-sabotage cycle that I was finding myself in. Um, so yeah, it was this turning point, that during those years, this is like in my mid 20s, and now, yeah, a long time ago. But those
Hmm.
skills, I still use them all the time today, and I reference that, and it's something I've had to continue, even though I'm no longer in crisis. I'm still using those skills all the time.
Wonderful. So here actually there's a common thread because again I have been fortunate to talk to many of my guests who have been having these challenges, the mental challenges, or it could be due to the environmental challenges which drove them to being depressed or coming to a end of a room and they did not know where to turn to. And as you mentioned, it is about the way you connected with people and
Mhm.
how important it is to connect with people. And that has been my one of my sing songs in most of my podcasters. We all are like angels with one wing. It's only when we hold on to somebody else that we learn how to fly higher.
Mm, yeah, I like that analogy. I like that. Yeah.
So based on that, so now that you have started soaring above your past, if I may say, the demons.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times people think, okay, you're feeling depressed. Is it because of the environmental situation? But you just crashed that thing. You're academically brilliant student. So how could a brilliant student have kind of these mental challenges? Because a lot of times that maths does not just equate. People
Mm,
it's basically people do take it on a face value, but we know, and especially with the youth, etc., it's a crisis,
mhm. Yep.
and that's what organizations they talk about. Let's talk. So, what has been your experience when you once you start coming out? How was the experience of? I know people who were around you, they knew the struggles, but what were the experience of people who did not know you?
Mhm.
And how did they view your a way more harsher word would be judge you? What was your
Mm,
experience on that? Yeah.
hmm. It's a good question. I'm not always sure if I know, like knew or know
Mm-hmm.
how people. I think a lot of people make assumptions or um, will judge quietly. I think what was empowering for me then and now is that people who don't know me would come forward and say, "Thank you for sharing." And I have a similar story. I know someone who has a similar story. Um, it made me feel, in a lot of ways, like there was this whole secret network of people. We were all struggling. And I think a lot of times it is the people who you would never suspect. For whatever reason, again, we make these assumptions around the types of people who may struggle or not, and sometimes media portrays mental illness in more severe ways for dramatic effect. Like I was talking to my partner about this because we're watching Ozark right now. If you've ever
Okay.
seen the show,
Mm-hmm.
so we're watching Ozark, and one of the characters in Ozark is bipolar, and it's it's a very severe case of unmanaged bipolar. Who's and I think, oh, it would be a shame if people were to assume that all bipolar looks like this, because it doesn't. Like this is
No.
one story and one person, and I think it's one thing that I would hope in sharing as well. I always am a bit nervous in talking about my experience, and don't always, I want to give this disclaimer of like it's just my story, and like my diagnosis or my journey will look different than someone who might have the same diagnosis or similar sorts of treatment. Like everyone is so unique and also so connected. Because
So
I find lots of people shared because I started opening up, which keeps me going.
okay, that's pretty cool. The reason this question came up was you mentioned a word shame.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's the time when you're coming out. It's I would take the analogy of if you're a smoker and you quit smoking,
Yeah.
and at that time people just have a drag, just have a smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the same thing is that when people are looking at you, oh, that was a thing. So now is it?
Yeah.
Let's move a little ahead. Now that you've got yourself involved with being a leader and an advocate and speaking out about what it means
Mm-hmm.
and the solutions. What have you been doing about it? If you'd like the listeners to know. Um,
Mm. Other than like speaking or
yeah, I
stuff.
mean, you're speaking
Yeah.
and you do put out on LinkedIn. I've seen some of the times which comes up. But what else are you doing, or what is the elements
Yeah.
that you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so in terms of corporate well-being, supporting employee resource groups that relate to mental health and well-being has really been important to me over the last several years. Whether it's through supporting events, or a lot of it is around education and awareness. So that's work that I do. I often do talks, whether it's like virtual sessions, like on Zoom or whatever, but doing workshops and talks, or going and speaking at events in person, specifically around strategies for bolstering resilience, to promote mental health. So a lot of the work that I do right now is not around, it's not managing mental health difficulties, it's around the skills that I practice, and teaching those to other people, of skills to boost mental health and well-being, hopefully before anyone is encountering challenges, because I think like that protective, proactive approach is really helpful. So I do that through workshops and also through coaching, helping people to build their resiliency, like I think like the coaching that you do, and mine just has more of an EQ slant to it.
Okay. So again, if it is not a trade secret,
Yeah.
what are the skill sets that you encourage people? I mean, just being mindful of the time, we do not have 4 hours or 5 hours, but then just in few
Sure.
minutes for anybody who's listening, because it may be the way I look at it is that a person who's listening to it may not be under the spotlight of having the challenges, but may know somebody
Mhm.
who could be having it, and if they are listening to it, what are the type of skill sets that they could bolster, as you have said the word,
Mhm.
to get
Sure.
more
Yeah.
stronger?
Yeah. Well, first, none of it is trade secret, and none of it is stuff that I invented, really. It's like stuff that I brought together, and I often call it a toolkit, and just trying to get the most number of tools in your toolkit so you can draw on the right thing in the right moment. There's a whole bucket of activities to promote mindfulness. So this can be anything from breathing exercises to how to practice mindfulness with your five senses. You can do an
Hmm.
exercise with a raisin, of holding a raisin in your hand and engaging each of your five senses in turn to like mindfully eat a single raisin. What would that look like? But grounding exercises like that, to be in the moment as opposed to a fear-based future or maybe a shame-filled past, that can be really helpful. So that's one part. I also teach skills around practicing gratitude and the impact of expressing gratitude. And there's so much fascinating science around how powerful gratitude is. So I teach different ways that people can practice gratitude. And then on like a very practical uh, angle, there's a whole lot of skills around self-care, around building in time for rest, managing our human energy cycle, around making sure you're building in micro and macro breaks into your life. Are you sleeping? Things like
Hmm.
that. I find for me, like nothing works if I'm overtired. Everything seems to be worse. So like those are just some of the types of skills that I would be working with people on, is addressing each one in turn and thinking, where could you pay attention and create positive change for yourself? That's the kind of work I do.
Fantastic. So here it comes to the next question. Currently, and especially you mentioned that you're in a corporate sector or you're in a work environment. We often talk about work-life balance,
Mhm.
and personally, I say that is it is absolutely a wrong statement because work is a subset of life. But unfortunately, a lot of people have made work as life,
Hmm.
and they put their entire mind, body, soul into that environment, which has a positive, or I don't see as a positive, but more as something which is not very full. It could be fulfilling for many, but when we've got a life, where is the balance is coming in from? So my question over here is, given more or less the current situation, what is happening around in the globe or things like that, uh,
Hmm.
people are not too sure whether they'll have a work tomorrow, or people are happening, how are they going to pay up their mortgages, what's going to happen. There are different concerns which takes place, and it's these small triggers which keeps on snowballing, and when the challenges takes place, how do you reply to that?
Hmm. Well, I think it's important to acknowledge the acknowledge all of the different inputs. As you were sort of setting up that question, uh, I was imagining this, this list. There's the politics and layoffs are coming, and there's a lot of things happening, and um, in a way, it reminded me of I have family that I joke with them, and they'll sometimes say, "Hey, Caitlin, like you must be so stressed. You have this and this and this," and they'll start rattling. If you weren't stressed before, you're stressed now, listening to all the different things. And I think what I come back to is making a distinction between what's inside your control versus what is outside of your control, and really focusing on what you can control, because so many of those things that we all struggle with, or we everyone is in different places when it comes to, say, finances or job stability, family dynamics. Like, everyone has, we're all in different places, and we all have our experiences navigating those things, which are often stressful, some of which is within our control, but not all. And so I think, where we can, to make that mental distinction between releasing what is outside our control, and not trying to pour emotional energy into that, I think can help free up some bandwidth. And then focusing on what we can control and being intentional about where we give our energy, I think that is in and of itself an act of self-care to do that.
Wonderful. There are a couple of things which, in fact, you had mentioned before, is that people forget a simple element of being in a state of thankfulness. We
Mm,
do not realize, it, but taking the fact that you're able to breathe properly. There are countries wherein the air is so polluted, breathing is a big challenge itself, or
mm-hmm.
whether you're having a bed to sleep on. There are people who are sleeping still, it's quite cold. People are sleeping out on the roads, or maybe in our countries where they do not have even roads properly, but they're sleeping somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's just going in for the elements of being thankful, writing it down. I think so. That is what I mean. That's what I in my book. It's a lot about journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Different elements. It's always about different challenges. s- Journal and see where that reaches. Because once you face your own truth, then you become more freer.
Yeah. Yes.
And also there was this part wherein you mentioned about anyway. Sorry, I just got sidetracked on that particular thing. So now here, Caitlin, what I would ask is that, are you having any specific program which is coming up in the near future? Because, guys, as I always say, is that I will be putting out Caitlin's links and websites, etc., in the comments below. So please do reach out to her in case you got, or if you, especially if you're from the people and culture or HR, etc., and there's something that you need to know. She comes with a wide range of experience. But my question is that, do you have anything happening around in the next few weeks, few months, so that if people are they hear this and they can directly jump into that particular podcast or the conference or something like that.
Yeah. The best way to see what I'm up to is on my website, which is
Mm-hmm,
bursty.ca.
mm-hmm,
Uh, I don't have any conferences or things coming up specific for dates, but I am working behind the scenes on building some EQ coursework that I
mm-hmm.
hope to have released before the end of the year. And I'm always accepting, requests or inquiries around doing workshops or talks. I have coaching clients that I'm working with. So if folks are interested in more one-on-one coaching, they can reach out as well about that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, just being mindful of time, Caitlin, is there any last thoughts that you would like to put across, or anything that in this around half an hour that we had this conversation, is there something that you feel that I should have spoken about that, or any
Mm.
thoughts? I don't say advice because advice even I do not listen, but any suggestions? Because in today's world, let's face it, people are, I don't know, again, that's my judgment. People at times, I feel that they are living in a very glass bubble,
Mm.
and they are quite, as we mentioned, the way the environment is going around, they are quite, anxiety is a part of has become a part of the DNA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what the elements that you mentioned about holding a raisin, for me, it was holding a grape and just looking at it or smelling, or which comes, yeah, it's raisin is a dried grape, but going through those particular elements per se,
Mhm.
being present. But people, even I asked the other day, we had a session wherein I told people just be quiet for 2 minutes, no
Mhm.
thoughts, and they said it was so difficult.
Yeah.
Because, but sorry, is there anything that comes to your mind that you would like to uh, tell the audience or the listeners?
Mm. All of what you were just sharing was really reminding me of the power of slowing down and rest. And I had a conversation recently where, my friend was sharing that they were struggling with being okay with not having anything planned for the weekend at all. They felt they were labeling it as, oh, I'm not social, I'm not productive, not doing anything. And I was really encouraging them to reframe that as productive in terms of restoring and rest. And I think collectively as a society, we are very quick to label ourselves usually as lazy, or we're not producing. You don't have something to show for it, and therefore it's not as much of value. And I think for a long time I was really caught up in attaching my worth to what I would put out into the world, whether it's marks or what my job title is, or it's very external.
Mhm,
But I think if we put more emphasis on just being and just unplug and just be peaceful with doing nothing, of rest, and I think we could grow so much from that. And like I also struggle, I say this and I also struggle with it, of
mhm.
slowing down. But I think that is such a powerful thing to take back, is like to use our time to rest and recharge. And so I would hope to give people permission to do more of that.
Actually, when you say about give permission to self, that's where I see as sometimes people, when you say the word self care, they mix it up with selfishness.
Yes, yeah,
Would you like to expand on that particular element? Is that the
sure.
difference between self care and selfishness?
Oh, for sure. And I have fallen into that trap as a parent, because I would want to take an hour for myself and think of that as selfish because I'm
Mm-hmm,
not caring for others. And I have come to realize it's not selfish to model for my kids what taking time to do something that will be restorative for me, whether that's reading or sleep or exercise. So it doesn't matter the activity, but to show that to my kids, I need to do that. They need to see me taking time for themselves, or they won't learn that for themselves.
Okay.
So that's very important. But I think, the common analogy I've heard is around the like an air mask. As it they say you've got to put on yours first. And so probably most of us have heard that and yet still struggle to do it. But self-care is not selfish. It is that act of putting on your air mask first so that you can be the most effective and helpful for other people when you do get back into the community or connecting with others. You're not going to be nearly as impactful or able to support others if you haven't taken that first step of taking care of yourself first.
Wonderful. That's what at times I boldly say is that if you don't learn to love your own self, how are you able to give a love to somebody else?
For sure.
You
Yeah.
cannot give something which you do not have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where it is. Anyway, Caitlin, at this point of time, thank you so very much for your space and time. So, guys, what we have just seen is that we have talked about acceptance. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk to people. It's okay to create a level of empathy first to your own self. And it's okay to know the importance that you are a human. And with that, you get more stronger. Reach out. And we have just heard Caitlin about the journey that she has gone through. So she's not just a leader, but she has led by examples. She has led by what her struggles have been, and that's where she is. So feel free to reach out with her. She's, as she mentioned, she's ready to connect. Look into her website, Bursty,
Mhm.
and see if there's. I'm sure there's quite a bit of learnings, and what I have just gone through is there have been some beautiful nuggets of learning. And I hope this conversation has helped you to glean some of those nuggets. Thank you so very much, Caitlin, for your space and time. Just
Thank you for having me. Thanks.